Hey everyone, I'm here with Connie Fanders. Hey Connie.
Hi, Alex.
And I have to say I'm so happy that she's carved some time out for us because she's going to teach us stuff that actually in preparing this today's thing, I'm like so interested. Connie has been in the Bernina family for how long?
Well, I started as a Bernina dealer in 1987, and then I started to work for Bernina in 2006. So most of my career has been with Bernina.
So I think it's safe to say you know these machines inside and out.
I do, and I know a lot of the models through the years. So
Right. And currently you have a new role. They keep taking advantage of your expertise. And your new role is
I manage the embroidery products for Bernina.
great. And today we're not talking about embroidery. Mm-mm.
Nope.
So what are we talking what are we talking about?
No. Actually, we're talking about computerized quilting, which happens to be done on the embroidery machine.
You know, it's interesting, Connie. I'll do lectures and all on quilting design, and I'll say, well, who has this nailed? And nobody ever puts their hand up. So you're really into something that I would say is pioneering and also an answer to this, you know?
Yeah, it really is because it's basically just a new quilting technique. And for those who have the embroidery module, or we now like to call it the quilting unit,
Mhm.
so those who have the quilting unit can take advantage of that and use that as another technique to quilt their quilts.
Well, let's take a look at exactly what you're talking about, and I'm sure I'll have questions if you don't mind at the end. Okay?
No, not at all. Go ahead. So yes, if you want to bring up the first image, we're just going to start by showing you a few examples of some projects that I have quilted using the computerized quilting technique in combination with other quilting techniques. So here is just a simple pillow, and you can see the computerized quilting technique done on the strips of the coins. Go ahead, flip to the next one, Alex. And this one also, this is one where you can see the round feathered wreath. That's the design I did with the computerized quilting technique, and then I added the free motion quilting around the border.
This is
Go ahead
great.
to the next image 3. Yes, and this is actually the quilt that I have behind me here. And for this quilt, I used the computerized quilting technique to quilt the entire border around the quilt.
This is
And then I used a free motion quilting in the middle, as well as some straight line quilting around the squares.
okay, so I'm blowing it up so we can take a look at the border here.
Okay,
Nice.
yes. And that border is a 7-inch wide border. It's just a zigzag border that just simply goes back and forth.
Okay.
And that was so simple to do with the quilting unit on the machine. And then I think I have another, there you go. This one here, I had fun with Tula Pink Fabrics and her embroidery designs. In this image, you can't see the embroidery designs, but I did. She has a collection, a quilting collection of her whimsical characters. And so I embroidered those around the quilt. And then I actually put this particular quilt on my quilt frame, and I did ruler work on the chevron pattern in between. So this is a combination, again, of the computerized quilting and ruler work.
I love straight line quilting. That
Yeah.
just sings to me. And you know, it takes a little bit of skill and talent, but boy, it has good results.
Yes, yes, it does. And then I think I have one more example. This one's a little bit far away in the photo, but this particular quilt, it's about a 45 by 45 inch quilt. But on this particular one, I did computerized quilting through the entire quilt. So all of the negative space on this quilt is quilted using the quilting unit on the embroidery machine. So,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, so should I go to number 6?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll explain a little bit more of how I have combined these techniques. And
Okay,
then I would like to talk about the process, because
please,
that's one of the
because
biggest questions I get is where do I start? And
exactly.
so we'll explain a little bit more about what computerized quilting is. And if you see in this particular design that Alex has up, this is from the beads quilt that you see behind me this way. And on this particular one, what I did is I embroidered or quilted with my quilting unit the flower design. And then I added the free motion quilting stitches around the flower just to give it more dimension. And then also on the strings, you see the light gray strips. Those are like strings holding the beads. So I did free motion there and then stippling in the dark gray around it. So in this particular quilt, I did two quilting techniques, the free motion quilting and computerized quilting.
Fabulous.
And yeah, you can go to image 7 and 8. You can flip through those as it shows. Here's, I have this hooped in my embroidery unit. And then the next image, image 8, shows me doing the stippling stitch around that. And of course, I used the stitch regulator, so I had all my stitches nice and perfect and even.
Right. I have to tell you, I have fallen so in love with that stitch regulator, especially on the Q20. Ah!
Yes, yeah, it's amazing. It's
Right.
amazing. Yeah, it's very good. Okay, then go ahead and go to image number 9, and that just shows this pillow that I have back here. This is the stack coins pillow, and this is just in the embroidery hoop. And again, too, you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the camera here, but let me get it going the right way. There, you can see these designs here are what I quilted using the quilting unit on my domestic machine.
So you're saying this is not hard to do?
No, no, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. Yeah. It really goes fast. And what I like about it is the quilting designs, you can get such accuracy. I mean, it looks like it has been done with automation on the long arm. And with, you know, the floral wreath pattern we showed earlier, it's just, like I said, that accuracy that you get with long arm and automation, but only you get that on your domestic machine.
So Connie, do you have to, before we move on, my question is do I need a special program or something like that to make this happen?
Okay, well, you do, and it's basically just an embroidery design. So if we think about just regular embroidery, there are embroidery designs that are quilt patterns. And so there are just embroidery patterns, and then there are continuous line quilting patterns as well. Just as there are for the long arm machine, those are also available for the domestic sewing machine in embroidery.
Nice. Okay.
And,
Now where are we going to go now?
okay, let's, do you want to see more examples of the combining of techniques? Let's go ahead and show image 10, 11, and then 12. So I'll just explain one more quilt, then we'll get into the process. So for this quilt here, this is, it's just a little table topper that I did. And for this particular quilt, my first step in talking about the process, I first did with my dual feed, I did straight line quilting around the designs here. And go ahead to the next image, Alex.
I'm paying attention to you and not my job.
That's okay. Okay, and then my next step was to put it on the domestic machine with the quilting unit or the embroidery module. And I then embroidered the feathered wreath design. And then go ahead to the next image. And then my last step was to do the border. And I did this free motion with, again, the Bernina stitch regulator and did the border around the quilt.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, so that hopefully explains what computerized quilting is. It's just another quilting technique that we can use, you know, in with our other quilting techniques of free motion quilting, ruler work, or straight line quilting.
You know, the thing I want to say about this too is that I did a red work once that was a grape wreath. Okay. It was red work. And then I did a applique pattern with the same wreath. And this just goes down to good design is good design. And you don't have to put every design in their little box, right? They can cross-pollinate. And I think if you think of it that way, it's kind of like, oh, okay. All right.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to explain it, because that's what you do. It's all in the process of planning how you want to quilt your quilt. And you think about, for the pillow, for instance, my first step there was to do the straight line quilting because that held everything together. And then I did the embroidery design.
How fun.
So,
okay,
yeah,
where are we
so-
going next here, friend?
Well, I want to talk about the entire process.
Okay.
And so, because that is one of the biggest questions I get, where do I begin?
Sure.
And so the first thing is, after, of course, you have it all pieced, you will want to baste it together and baste however you choose to. My preferred method is to use safety pins, but it's whatever your method is. And so I pin baste everything together, and then I will secure it. And I like to secure it with a basting stitch. On our machines, we have a great basting stitch that will, it'll stitch every fourth stitch. And so I can make my basting stitch about 3/4 of an inch long, which is super easy to take out. So then I will do that securing stitch, which then enables me to take out my safety pins as I'm rehooping my fabric.
Can you hear my cat? Can you hear my cat?
I cannot.
Oh, I'm just gonna say, people, I have an old senile cat. So let's just go on and excuse me for that. Can you just say?
I'm just too busy talking.
Okay, so you're gonna secure it with a stitch. Sorry.
I secure it with my basting stitch. That's right. Yep. And then my next step is just to wherever I want. I start with my largest embroidery designs or quilting designs, and I hoop that area of my quilt, and I just stitch that. And then I move to the next area and put the next design on. When I rehoop, I leave my outer hoop actually on my embroidery module, and I just release the inner hoop. Actually, I don't know if you can see, but I can just release it. I put my inner hoop on top like this, and then I shift my quilt to the next spot and then rehoop it.
Okay, so
it goes really fast.
I'm an embroiderer, okay, and now I want to try this out. Is there any big trick of hooping with batting and all that?
With the batting, that is where your securing comes in, where I basted it, because that is what's holding all of your layers together. I've been experimenting with all different types of fillers, and, I've used Insel Bright and done some placemats. With this technique, I've used the Soft and Stable, which makes a beautiful for doing project bags and totes. You can quilt those. And then I've tried several different types of battings, and I've even tried different layers, many layers, I shouldn't say many, 2 layers of batting sometimes, just to really in an effort to test the hoops and how secure that quilt is going to be while it is moving in the model.
Okay. So I think there's some more here, some more images.
Okay, yeah, what else do we have here? So yeah, the rest of the images just show this technique, again, doing more. So you could go to image number 13, and this is the Tula quilt I have right here. And this is, again, I embroidered all of the designs first. And what's kind of fun is they are kind of hidden within the quilt, and that's what I like about it. They're not real bold, and they don't stand out like they're an embroidery design.
Oh, that's beautiful.
They just blend in with the quilt. And so that was my first step. And then go ahead, put in image, what do we have, 14? There you go. And that's where I have it then on my long arm, and I'm doing the ruler work in the chevron pattern.
So there's no big deal to switch from one machine to the other at all. Don't feel like you're stuck on one machine.
Oh, absolutely not. Or one technique.
Right.
So now this is the color chart quilt that's behind me. And this is doing my rows of straight line quilting, which actually ended up being my my border for my border. So that was my boundaries, maybe I should say, my boundaries for the border that I embroidered.
Can I throw a tip in there? Even when I'm using my walking foot, I will still use a straight line ruler, because it just helps. Because even though you're on a walking foot or you're using dual feet or whatever, you can still get kind of wonky. And so I just use that just as a mud guard, and it works beautifully.
That's an excellent idea. I'm going to try that.
Yeah. Right, okay, so where are we now?
Then image 16 will show. Okay, so that is the actual quilting of the border on that particular quilt.
Wow. This is really exciting, Connie.
Yeah. It's just fun. I tell you, it is so addicting. I have been making so many quilts here because I can now quilt them so fast with my embroidery module. And that image just showed me doing the free motion quilting, just that little ribbon stitch in the small borders. And then this one here, this is the quilt that I quilted the entire quilt with the embroidery machine. And this shows my basting stitches. And my basting stitches, I placed them on this particular quilt, so it made my actual square that I wanted to put my square embroidery design in. And so that's how I placed it on.
I'm going to ask you a question that I'm going to be throwing you a curveball here.
Okay.
Is there any reason you're not using a basting product and you're using pins instead?
No, I have no reason whatsoever. It's I guess I'm still old school with my quilting techniques, and I have the safety pins, and that's just what I've used.
Okay.
But other suggestions? Do you have other suggestions of what you like to use?
Quilters Select, Fuse Light.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Oops, and this is, I think, the last image. Look at that.
Yeah, and so then after I basted it, and then I went back and I quilted all of the designs in it.
So this is going to be kind of a crazy question. People go to buy their machine, and you can get some Berninas with the opportunity to add on an embroidery quilting unit, or it comes with, or whatever. Are people coming through the gate now to get this first for quilting and then embroidery?
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing, that's what I would love for this to come to. But we're now seeing quilters seeing a real purpose and the advantage of having the embroidery units, or the quilting units, as we're now calling them. And so those who maybe have a Bernina machine without it are going and purchasing those now. All of those who maybe have a Bernina 770 out there with, and bought it just for the piecing and the free motion and the straight line quilting. Well, if you add that embroidery module onto it, then you can do computerized quilting.
Exactly. And I really personally push the 700 series, and most people, if they don't get the top of the line 700, they get the medium so that they can add on, which is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I'm actually really enjoying this and being able to just focus on the embroidery and really spending more time with the machines. It's been a delight.
I know people are out there thinking, yeah, she's got a tough job. She works her tail off.
We get to work on the new products too, so that's a lot of fun as well.
Well, and then speaking of that, would you mind coming back at some point and just tell us what's new, or if you've got some new discovery? Because I'm going to say this. I mean, everybody knows I love Bernina, and we love Bernina for supporting the quilt show. But any information you can bring to anybody with a high-end machine is a gift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love to. And we actually have our Bernina University for our dealers coming up in July, where we have a lot of new product launches. And so after that, I would love to come back and talk about some of the new things, because we do have some exciting things coming out.
That would be great. Well, thanks so much. And I'm glad we survived a senile cat in a thunderstorm.
That's right. I am too. It all went pretty well.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex. I enjoyed it.